The beautiful Black Sea along Georgia's coastline is often synonymous with tourism, but also raises deeper geopolitical questions. Georgia, a former republic of the Soviet Union, seceded in 1989 and became independent in 1991. Now, in 2025, the streets of its capital, Tbilisi, are divided over the results of a disputed election. The ruling Georgian Dream Party is dividing the country between a perceived pro-Russian association and pro-Western alliance. Victor Kipiani is the chair of Geocase, a think tank that has regional and global reach, and founding partner of MKD Law, and it deals with international trade and banking. Victor, thank you so much for joining me for the Media Line.
Pleasure. Thank you.
How does Georgia protect its current borders from reoccupation when Russia has set its sights on other countries, as we continue to witness in the bloody war between Ukraine and Russia?
Yes, when it comes to Georgia and when it comes to Georgia's geopolitical posture, I very much favor that type of expression which speaks about being the prisoner of geography. And I think, that connotation, that name speaks for itself. Besides, as you rightly pointed out, we are in a very volatile region. The South Caucasus is a soft valley of Russia, with all the implications in terms of security, in terms of the so-called zones of influences. And on top of that, there is still a type of a Soviet legacy in Georgia, which has not gone entirely. And of course, added to that, and added with different challenges in the region, of course, it also contributes to the complexities of Georgian domestic politics and the complexities of having a solid security guarantees. Although when I'm saying guarantees, nothing is granted in this world. We can't speak about the absolute security protection, but still, that's something Georgia has been seeking for centuries. So this type of challenge is not new for this nation historically. It's just in different contexts, in a different environment. And as we point out to the realities of these days, those security challenges are at the background of the war in Ukraine, which is not just about the war in Ukraine, but about the new balance of the power in the wider region. And I also keep saying that Georgia's challenges are in the aftermath of the Third Nagorno-Karabakh war, which has created a completely different geopolitical and security landscape in the region. So all those factors in entirety has a direct impact on Georgia's posture, security-wise and geopolitical-wise.
What kind of backdoor meetings are happening between Georgia and Russia?
I'm not entirely sure if there are any backdoor meetings which are happening between two nations, two countries. We have to mention necessarily that the only formal platform between Georgia and Russia, it's the so-called Geneva format, which is about addressing the existing conflicts in Georgia. But if there's anything else behind the Geneva format, of course, we could hear a number of speculations and different rumors flying around, but in my position, honestly saying, I don't think it's quite serious to rely on any of those allegations. As I keep saying, no one has seen a smoking gun so far. But I do not rule out that there are some communications in terms of business to business, community to community. Perhaps someone could also be thinking about bringing together the think tank communities or academia to academia, because as we usually say, track 1.5 diplomacy or track 2.0 diplomacy could be helpful in terms of adding or contributing, understanding each other's concerns better than sometimes people at the official level or this formal stakeholders could understand. So I think, that could be, those contexts could be of an added value. Of course, nothing could change the geography, and also very much advocating that when we speak about the geography, the geography of Georgia also dictates for the opportunities and for limitations. So I think we should be looking into the eyes of the reality as realistically as possible.
The Black Sea is geographically situated near Russia, Europe, NATO's eastern countries, and the Middle East. It's also in close proximity to a conflict that's existed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And these are only some of the strategic defense considerations that your think tank researches and explores. Can you break down the order of gravity of concern from the regional players, as there are many?
Yes, again, historically, the complex relations with Russia have been the case and will continue to be the case in the foreseeable future, which is not surprising, and I don't think that it's something which goes beyond the logics of international politics. Russia continues to be at least the regional hegemon, and as regional hegemon, it will continue exercising its influence or its impact on its neighborhood. On top of that, the complexity of the South Caucasus, especially after the Nagorno-Karabakh war, after Azerbaijan has liberated the occupied territories, been about inviting different players into the region. And in that respect, I think, the South Caucasus these days is not any less a complex region than the Middle East is, with confluence of religious factors, the ethnic factors, and many others as well. Just to mention in a very brief way that both Armenia and Azerbaijan are building up their alliances, own alliances, and I think, building those alliances in terms of exercising better security posture and better keep building up their own deterrence also brings another quite sensitive, raises quite sensitive question on the issue how much of the agency would be left to the South Caucasian nations, which is Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, in terms of having their own autonomous say when it comes to regional matters. So I think, the complexities, of course, also runs through that, as I was saying, the post-Karabakh regional order as well. And the last but not the least, the Black Sea, which has always been the battle, and historically the battle of influences, of geopolitical the impacts. Black Sea, which is the intersection of different regional or geopolitical winds, which are not always sometimes very much in the synergy with each other. Based on a famous Chinese saying, we live in interesting times. So it remains to be seen how we Georgians would be able to translate those interesting times into the tangible opportunities and better opportunities for us.
How would you describe Georgia's Westernization and its hope for Euro-Atlantic integration?
This is the most critical issue as we speak these days. For quite some time, I was among those few people who were advocating for Georgia's realistic politics by saying that it was about, the hedging in international politics. It's about the Georgia's balancing act. But these days there is quite a big controversy in the country, to put it very mildly. And that controversy reflects in squeezing out the Western matrica from Georgia, squeezing out the Western matrica. And when we say the Western matrica, it's primarily about the rule of law, it's about accountability, it's about transparency, it's about all the basic elements which typically could be attributed to Western matrica. And the Western matrica is not just about the geography, it's about the type of the governance. And that, of course, came at a very inappropriate moment when Georgia has been granted the EU candidate status, and we were supposed to open accession talks by fall last year. Unfortunately, for us, intentionally, to some extent as well, those relations, they went to the south. Accession talks have not been opened, and on top of that, there have been formal declaration from both sides, from Georgia's end and from EU's end, that accession talks are to be suspended. So that's where we are at this point. Georgia's compliance policy with EU's foreign and security policies went down significantly. And all that goes at the background of very vitriolic, to put it mildly, very vitriolic language by Georgian stakeholders when it comes to the West, when it comes to the EU. So again, those relations at this point, they are experiencing very hard times.
What do you think will turn the tide?
I think that what's happening in Georgia, it's not exception to the rule when the Western Russia or the revisionist camp on one side and the Western camp on the other side are about finding a new balancing points in the region, in Eurasia, and it extremely sensitive for the so-called bridge states, or the states which are in the flux situation. Those are Ukraine in the first place, Moldova, Georgia, probably some others across the Russian borders, which still continue hanging in the geopolitical vacuum, in the geopolitical flux. Why that happened and why that continues to happen has a sort of very broad genesis and deeper causes, not just of historical nature, but probably of some cultural perceptions as well. So, but that is the status at this point. So I think that once we spoke about the war in Ukraine or a few other developments in Russia and outside of Russia, it also remains to be seen in which way the EU would develop. It also very much hinged on the Trump's signature policies in the region, and we have to see how the transactionality in that policy could eventually translate into some certainty and some more sort of definitive shapes of contours of the policies. So I think that all in all, that would have a direct impact on the Georgian domestic landscape as well.
Do Americans understand the importance of a secure Black Sea?
I came across the very interesting appeal to the American audience in one of the authoritative publications that United States is not a U.S. nation, Black Sea nation, but should become a Black Sea power. And that resonates well enough when we speak about possibly increasing the posture on the stance of the United States in the region. And in addition to the context, we have to mention necessarily a very interesting development and very positive development, which relates to the deliberations at the level of the U.S. Congress of the so-called Black Sea Security Bill. So that gives a clear message that Black Sea is on the radars, especially since the war in Ukraine has started. Those activities, that interest became even more articulated. Of course, when we speak about the role of the United States in the region, that also comes to the specificity of U.S. relations with Turkey. Turkey, which due to the Montreux Convention has very significant leverages when it comes to the Black Sea. But again, this is really very right momentum for the United States, be it on the legislative level or be on the level of the public perceptions, to pay close attention to the region, because the Black Sea is not just about the geography. It's about having a ripple effect on the Black Sea nations and beyond the Black Sea nations as well.
You spoke about the need for your country to explore ways to join the White House Economic Prosperity Network. What cooperation currently exists with the United States?
Regretfully enough, while we spoke about the very sort of, the Georgia's U-turn when it comes to the Western policies and Georgia's U.S. relations, there was a very fundamental document which was concluded after the Russia-Georgia's war in 2009. The document was called the Strategic Charter of the Partnership. That charter at this point is suspended, as well as different specifically designated programs, be those in the defense and security or on the education, etc., etc. So those programs are not active anymore. Again, it goes along with very weird changes in Georgian politics, very weird changes and very bizarre changes in terms of the existing government and existing official politics. So it remains to be seen how the developments will be taking place on the ground, and I'm very much sure that, very much believe that once the situation on the ground changes, the reversal to the status quo, which we've been exercising for many years and decades, would be restored, if not immediately, then quickly enough. And the restoring those relations should go by different straight or by different the dimensions of bilateral relations, in terms of perhaps speaking or discussing the free trade agreement, some alleviations in visa regime, different other economic or security related programs. So I think that there would be some lessons learned, both on the Georgian side and on the US side, once this crisis in bilateral relations is over.
Are there private initiatives that are taking place despite the quagmire?
I think, the private initiatives are there, and the private initiatives is something which we at Geocase and people in our community are doing. I think keeping that thread of healthy campaign and healthy communication is very much important, because that would help us to sustain at least the minimum understanding and the minimum relations between two nations. And once the crisis is over, that those relations or those communications would present good solid grounds upon which formal new structures of the bilateral relations would be built on.
You touched on the European Union, but I need to bring up NATO. Where does Georgia stand in terms of affiliation with NATO?
With NATO, although Georgia is not a formal member of the NATO, but actually we did have different programs of cooperation. To mention just one of them, it was a substantial package of NATO-Georgia's relations or cooperation, and that package has been providing for different types of elements or components, except of just one, being a formal member of NATO. Again, that program is on hold for the moment being.
Why?
In the context of its sort of an animosity, which we already discussed, and that standoff very much unpleasant standoff when it comes to the level of democracy in Georgia, to the institutional capacity building, and to rolling back the at the formal level, the pro-Western attitudes. Again, I want myself to make one point very clear. Remember, we mentioned this being the prisoner of geography. So we have to work out proper relations with every major stakeholder or actor in the region. There is nothing against, I do have nothing against diversifying Georgia's relations, be it with China or different other countries, but diversification should not be taking place at the expense of the existing relations. And when we speak about the relations, it's also about prioritizing the relations. And priority, of course, very strongly premised on the healthy US-Georgia relations and the healthy and solid EU-Georgia relations. And I don't think that when we speak about EU and US on one side and different other parts of the world, those relations should or could be put at the loggerheads. So I think that, again, when speaking about pragmatic politics, about rational politics, the priorities should be there and should be well discerned.
What are the greatest risks facing this small nation?
I think that to start with, I'm challenging myself when I say a small nation. I more intend to say the compact nation. I don't think that any nation in the world regards itself as a small, and Georgia, with its very rich historical background, and cultural background, of course, numerically it's a small nation, but still it's not as small as someone could perceive. But it's a really excellent question when we speak about the fate of compact or the so-called small nations. And my take and my point that it's not in as much about democracy, and not because democracy is something which has to be neglected, or rule of law which has to be neglected, but it's about competitiveness. It's about mobility. It's about having your own say and having your own value as well, and having your own function. Once we speak about Georgia, since we have regained our independence in 1991, again, it's been a very constant search for the function, for the role, because the tectonics of the structure of modern relations, international relations, it's not just about being the consumer, it's also being the contributor. So that is about that type of competitiveness. And I think the constant the reshuffling in your own posture, in your own role, in terms of identifying new layers, how useful you could be in the regional context or in the sub-regional context, speaks of your own value. And I think, once we say about the future day of Georgia, it's also about competitiveness, it's about adaptability, it's about the function. Once you know that, and I think that's the plight for any compact nation, that nothing is for granted. You should always be continue punching above your weight, always affirming, always proving to others that you are of some use, of some value, of some role.
The relationship between Israel and Georgia has long been strong. The establishment of the Israel House, chaired by Moshe Itzik, along with the inclusion of Holocaust studies in university curricula, sets an example for other Eastern European countries to follow. Anti-Semitism is an all-time high globally, and Europe is no exception. How is Israel perceived by members of parliament and by the Georgian public?
You mentioned the Israeli House, you mentioned Mr. Itzik Moshe, and my special credits goes to this very unique personality who sometimes does even more then institutions are capable to do so. My special thanks to him. And that, by the way, again speaks how much a personal initiative or individual efforts could be helpful in terms of contributing to the wider picture. Now, to the Israeli-Georgia relations. Many Georgians and many Israelis would agree with me that it's really hard to find any second country with so strong pro-Israeli attitudes like Georgia is. And I think that Israelis do feel that very warm welcome here in Georgia when they come either for business or for some pleasure or leisure, etc., etc. So this is something we all have to be proud of. But since you asked me a question about the compact nations, and of course, Israel's dimension is much bigger, is much broader, is much wider. But I think we both nations, we to some extent we share the same fate. Again, which is about always proving your own viability. And I think that in that respect, we still have some the hidden potentials for increasing that level of partnership. And I had a privilege to visit Israel very recently in May of this year. And in course of different discussions, I kept saying that thinking of strategic content of those partnership and cooperation is very timely, could be very and should be very high on the agenda. I do believe that there are some opportunities or some leverages which Georgia has on its side and could provide to Israel in terms of increasing Israel's interest in the region and facilitating, expanding Israel's interest in the region. And I think that from Israel's point of view, Georgia could have a global voice on international arena as well, that by Israel, and through Israel, projecting its interests and projecting its voice in a better way, in a more articulated way, because the image of Israel, the reputation of Israel is practicable resources which Israel has worldwide could be extremely beneficial and helpful for us as well.
More than 150,000 Israelis have visited Georgia in the last quarter of 2025. To what do you attribute their travel quest for this desired destination?
I think that it's perhaps it's a feeling of having a second home. And that's something which could not be taught, could not be learned. It is either there by some magics of the heaven, if you wish, so to put this in that way. So I think that's the mystery, that's the benign mystery, and that's something which we have to cherish and to have acknowledged, recognized, and be proud of.
What's next for Victor Kipiani?
I find it's a bit hard to make any the sort of crystal clear projections. But also very much in favor to respond in this way. Never say never. So never say never. I think that serving your own country in different capacities, regardless of a shape or form of content, is always a privilege and is always a responsibility. And not, by the way, when I say to be of service to your own country, not because I'm speaking with international media, let's put it this way, international media, but I think that that service also entails using those internationally recognized opportunities which we could exploit and which we could put to the benefit of this country as well.
Victor Kipiani, really grateful for the interview and best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You too.